turn down my music just a little. It can be pretty hard to share music while we hang out because of copyrights issues, but I'm listening to my good friend Maxwell Hughes, some of my favorite music to create to, and he gave me permission to use it, so I think it's alright that it's in the background. If you want to follow along, Maxwell Hughes on Spotify, always a good decision. Alright. I think we're live. It's always hard to tell in the beginning because I have a very old computer and it likes to struggle through what I put it through. I'm just going to do what I do. I'm just going to talk as if everyone can hear me and hope for the best. So, yeah, I've been committed to doing live streams on Thursdays, and it is currently 10 o'clock for me, local time. Yeah, it was a pretty long day, and I had an unexpected Buddhist meditation circle that appeared in the common space next to me. One of the cool things about working out of the studio is that this community space becomes so many things at so many different times. A couple weekends ago, I was in here having a medicine journey while there was like a 30-person ceramics class going on out there. And then when I was out of that journey and looked in the room again, there was a podcast being filmed. So yeah, today I had, I don't know, kind of a rough day. I feel like I'm back on the hustle after a little period of just real pure creativity. I'm putting together a whole sales funnel kind of thing that's going to be offering some of my art, and I'm really excited about it, but it also is it's a different type of headspace. And I started painting and getting into art because I didn't want to be staring at the computer as much. I spent 10 years running a tech company and just on the computer 24/7, so it's a little bit bittersweet that I'm back on the computer, but at least the things that I'm building are for my passions, and I feel good about them. So yeah, I know this is just kind of me hanging out and rambling, but I feel like it always ends up being the right decision to just show up and share and be myself and be a voice in the world, regardless of whether that voice is right or wrong or brilliant or just present. I think a lot of what I've been doing in my art and in my life is showing up and seeing what happens and being open to whatever that might be, rather than trying to control everything or have expectations or outcomes that I am struggling to put into the world. So I think I'm gonna muse on the last couple hours and some of the conversation that was being had in that meditation circle, and I'm going to put paint on paper for your enjoyment. And I hope that you get to zone out a little bit and find some camaraderie, find some community in another human being who is going through life, trying their best, learning along the way, growing, and showing up. I think that's the theme. That's the theme of my 2024, and probably beyond. Is there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around me. I feel that, and the group that was just meeting and talking, has an outlook that sees a lot of challenges ahead, and I don't deny that. I think that regardless of the outcome of the U.S. elections or anything else, we've sort of been sowing the seeds of our own challenge globally for a while. And one of the things that was talked about in that little meditation circle was that there are periods of wisdom and light and growth and justice and harmony, and those are beautiful. Those are when a lot of art gets made and civilizations are built, and we get advancements in the human condition. And then there's periods of degeneration, and yeah, and I'm not going to say which one I think it is, because I actually at one point in, I mean, I don't think that there's like a right answer. It's not like Jeopardy. But at one point in the conversation this evening, I raised my hand and I just said, what if what is happening is what is supposed to be happening? Or what if there's not some imagined timeline that we're supposed to be on? This is the timeline. And we are all exactly who we are, where we are, ready to go through this human experience. And that flavor of optimism, I feel it kind of in waves. I think sometimes during the day, like today, staring at the computer, trying to set up all these internet web pages and just feeling really burned out of the hustle. You know, I think one of the things that I've struggled with is when I had lots of money. I've never had a ton of money, but when I had enough money to not worry about money, my self-worth was just didn't need to be stated. I just, I could do the things I wanted to do. I could travel, I could buy things, I could just kind of create my own adventure. And then in the last couple of years, it's been sort of a choice, a conscious decision to take a break after my entrepreneurial battleground and the heartbreak that I ended up with. And so, yeah, kind of getting back into the swing of working, I feel this sadness that my self-worth is dependent on my ability to make money. And I'm capable of such beautiful creativity. And that's what I've been doing in this space, is just coming in here and making beautiful art, expressive and flowing, and just coming from this center that is so energetic and so optimistic. And then the reality is gotta sell it. People gotta buy it. I gotta be a salesman. I gotta have conversations. I have to be standing for my art and selling my art. And those are all skills, and I'm enjoying learning them. It's just a different side of the brain. And I was at one point really sad today that this used to be a space where I could just come in whenever I wanted to and make a big canvas and just go to town and then dip out and not have to worry about the financial component, because I just had some pretty nice things play out that allowed me to focus my energy really carefully, I guess. And so this is all just to say that finding creativity in our lives and in a busy day and a busy existence of earning money, paying the rent, paying the mortgage, validating our existence. I guess that's why I want to just keep coming back and sharing, all of these brush strokes, because I don't know what they're going to be. I don't know where they're going, but I know I love making them. And I know that despite what evidence there is to the contrary, I don't think there's anything truly more important than making art and sharing words and reflecting back the beauty that everywhere is in nature. So this style of painting that I've kind of been developing, the thing that I like about it is that there are really no mistakes. There's certainly moments where I might say like, oh, I wish I hadn't made that stroke, or it looked better before I made that last stroke, or whatever. There's always that kind of ongoing narrative of the critic. But this experience right now, and even the words that I'm saying, for me, it's just about seeing what comes next and having enough faith and trust in myself and in just the unfolding happening to just keep going. And the funny thing about live streams, it's really different than making a YouTube video. I used to make kind of the 20-minute crypto check-in videos, and I would make them and re-edit them, and sometimes I do it 3 or 4 times and never post it at all. And sometimes, yeah, I'd go months and months and months without saying anything because I felt like if I didn't have anything really valuable to say, then might as well not say anything. But the thing that's interesting is that when I would go back to those videos weeks or months later, I found that what I actually had to say was pretty relevant and pretty important and pretty beautiful in a way. And I think that there's a lot of things that I could have posted that I was just too fearful to share, fearful that it wasn't good enough or didn't meet some standard that I was the only one really creating. And I think art is the exact same way. And the live stream component and even the live painting component kind of breaks that, where, you know, this might not be the most intelligent thing I'm ever going to say, and this might not be the most important video I'm ever going to make, but in the act of showing up and doing it, I get to flex these creative muscles over and over and over, and over time, the marks on the page, the words in the ether, they do matter. They do manifest. They do have impact. And so part of this is just, yeah, hanging out and letting my mind wander a little bit, letting my tongue wander a little bit, and just being curious to see what happens next and bring different colors together to see what they're gonna do. And to just be really deeply curious, like a kid. A lot of childhood, I think, is spent experimenting and testing boundaries, getting in trouble, seeing how much we can get away with, and then we kind of find a pattern of behavior that is safe and comfortable and non-threatening to the ones around us, and so we get kind of put in boxes. And I think this is not a time to be put in boxes. I do not want to be in a box, not again. This is already just looking fiery and beautiful. And I think what my intention is here is I want to bring together some of these different colors of paint, and then I want to spend a little bit more time than usual as in lately. Lately I've been doing things like the painting behind me, which I'll put back up here in a second, that are just sort of these big, very expressive strokes. And I haven't spent as much time with my recent work in the kind of heady space. And so with this one, I'm gonna kind of set down some of the base layers, and then I'm actually gonna let my mind wander. And I don't know if you can see this on the camera. I mean, this is part of my favorite. This is one of my favorite parts. It's just how everything runs together. And talking about that kind of childhood curiosity, this paint, when it's wet, it's just so unpredictable, and it's so dynamic, and you get the feeling that it's alive and breathing, and I'm just kind of feeding it. I'm feeding the page, and then in the end it will dry and we'll kind of be left with this static image. But right now it's messy and it's unpredictable, and things can run and drip, and I really like that. I like being in a space where nothing is really set in stone. I feel like there's a lot of analogies that could be made with art and life, and I've seen my life more and more like my art, and I feel like the present moment is one of wetness, of non-knowing, and kind of breath holding, maybe seeing where the other shoe drops, as it were. And that is such an exciting place. Day after day, living in the not knowing. And again, I think if you tuned in at the very beginning, I started off by saying that I was in the studio tonight and there was a meditation circle gathering, and the general sense that I got from the participants was a kind of a weariness, just a world weariness, and fear. And yeah, I think I was talking a little bit about my own like capitalist dance of having to balance my true joy and passion with what has to be done to pay the bills, and to be seen as worthy of continuing living as I do. But in that meditation circle, yeah, I think it was just a recognition of this messy phase of the paint not really being dry yet. And this painting right now, it can turn any which way. I'm actually going to flip the whole thing upside down because there's not even a right side up. To turn it upside down just changes the whole composition, changes the whole intention and the feel. And day to day, I think things keep getting turned this way and that. I'll have a day of extreme optimism and just feeling like, all right, it's all working out. It's gonna work. We're gonna do it. This lifestyle that I want to live of being able to be creative and not a slave to things of my own creation, like my last chapter. Let's see, this is going to be kind of like a sun, I think. Might have to do a couple layers. Maybe we'll just kind of do a general brightness up here. I also am just recognizing and welcoming that I chose to turn the camera on kind of late tonight, and there might have been a lot of things that I was thinking like, oh, I could talk about that. Oh, that'd be pretty smart. And really, in this moment, it's just kind of like this painting, wandering around, noodling. See if maybe I can, in the process of doing this, maybe access something a little deeper. So I think, as I keep turning this around, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down to a smaller brush, and I'm going to just kind of hit this with one more layer right in here. I feel like the composition kind of just gets focused right here in this bright color. It's very energetic, and I think with the black ink that I'm going to add, this is going to be kind of the focal point. I think it's going to look really maybe Asian brushwork inspired. So I'm going to kind of emphasize this. Wow. So Aaron James says, Jesus, my autistic 5-year-old could paint this. So that's pretty cool that you named your autistic 5-year-old Jesus. That's a big name. That carries some weight. So this is a great example. I'm actually super stoked that, of the 3 comments that have happened so far, one of them is just like a blatant hater. Because I think one of the things that happens to us is that we hear that noise, and it can be scary. It can be like, oh, well, now I'm gonna question my art, I'm gonna question my gifts for the world, and I'm gonna hide it because the bullies are out there. And part of my growth has just been saying, you know what? Uh, you are welcome to tune in. You're welcome to say nasty, vile stuff. That doesn't change my joy in making the art that I make and sharing it in the way that I share it. And I would encourage anyone to do the same. And I hope your autistic 5-year-old gets to make art like this. It's a wonderful thing to do. I'm not claiming any kind of superiority or that the skills involved are beyond the reach of mortal men. What I'm doing is I'm showing up. I'm sharing a creative process that is very freeing. And I am similarly just using my voice to share what's real for me right now, what's alive for me. And sometimes it might take a while. Sometimes it might take an entire painting to get to the end and be like, oh, okay, that's what it was. That's what we were working towards. And it takes a welcoming of all the layers, all of the steps, all of the ugly phase of a painting. Every painting goes through an ugly phase. And I live paint, so I'm often in front of people walking by, and I know that they'll never see the end of the painting, that they're just going to see this flashbulb moment when it was messy and wet and running. And I have the confidence, it took a while, but I have the confidence to keep going, to keep making it, and to know that the art that I make, both on a page and just in the people that I influence, or just the people next to you in line at the coffee shop, or how I show up in the world, that it's always an unfinished painting, but it's all the different layers and all of the steps that in the end become something beautiful. And I have no problem with someone coming in and making a comment that a 5-year-old could do this. That's actually a compliment, because 5-year-olds are naturally so full of their genius. And it's actually pretty tragic to see what happens as people get older, as kids get older, and that genius and that willingness to be messy, that willingness to suspend self-criticism, that to create like a 5-year-old, that's about the highest compliment that you could give an artist. And I think getting back to our inner 5-year-old is very much what could make all the difference in our lives and in our relationships. A 5-year-old has a kind of stubborn dignity and can be outraged when that dignity is trodden upon. And I think it's at certain places and stages in our lives we kind of sacrifice that for safety. Ooh, that's kind of fun. Good stuff. Don't listen to the hate. See, that's the thing. I think we can have an ear open to the hate, and I think we can have an empathy for the hate, because someone who takes the time to move that hate from them in your direction, that hate was not theirs. They did not generate it. It's not like they were born with a heart full of hate. I think that the hate kind of is a reflection of the frustration and of the, if someone says that looks like a 5-year-old could do it, I bet that there was a moment in their young life when they were spreading their creative wings, and some parent or teacher or friend or whoever else was also passing that hate forward, that anger and frustration, and it continues. But I don't know. I think that the fact that there is so much hate right now is a reflection of an overall, I'll just say, ill health. of our collective species, and probably things that are being worked out as we speak. I started off talking about how I was here tonight working on some stuff, and then a meditation circle just sort of materialized, and I agreed to kind of stay and lock up the building afterwards, and just hearing the general flavor of people in their weariness and their fear and their feeling like we've been in dark times, and it's likely to get darker before it gets light again. And so anyway, I bring all that up just to say that one of the themes was that there are periods of growth and expansion and justice and wisdom and equality and a shared vision. And those are these really big, expansive times for human beings. And then there are other times when it's more of a degeneration, and things are breaking down, and old systems are coming apart, and new things are being built, and it can be out of balance and out of whack. And I think that, yeah, it's like a messy painting, like hateful comments, like a world where there's suffering and uncertainty. The trick, and I think what the Buddhists were doing in their meditation, I mean, they were just sitting and they were accessing this core in themselves that was peaceful and calm and has endured through all kinds of atrocities throughout the generations. They were saying, so the guy who's leading it, he lit a candle and said, you know, this candle has been burning for us for 2,600 years through all kinds of periods, good and bad. You know, periods of growth and wisdom and periods of violent murder and oppression, yet that candle has still been burning. And yeah, and I think that that's kind of getting back to my point, getting back to just that willingness to show up, and the willingness to take in the hate or the anger or the distrust, and to bring it into that center in us that is like a 5-year-old, that is able to roll with the punches and is resilient and can fall down and get right back up and is just present with that puppy dog energy. And to transform that energy, transform the hate and the hurt into something else. Because as human beings, we are strong enough to endure all kinds of shit, and we have and we will. And there's you know, the tendency to maybe check out or hide. You know, that was one of the things also I kind of heard, was just this feeling that, like, all right, if things are gonna get really dark, we need to just tend this flame. We need to be the ones that carry it on. But I feel like carrying the flame in the wide open, you know, having the conversations now is about the most important thing we can do. Okay, so I am going to grab my black ink, and we're gonna get a little bit heady on top of this messy, flowy colorfulness. And this can be fun. Let's see here. So I'm gonna go with kind of a bigger brush, I think. I was thinking and intending to be kind of bigger and bolder. It's late at night, I'm pretty tired. I feel like just not getting lost in the sauce, not getting too detailed is going to be a lot more satisfying. So I'm going to go with a little bit bigger brush than I normally would, I guess. I think we're going to grab this guy here. That's pretty big. Let's see what we got. This one could be kind of cool. It's got a lot of bristle. And the paint on the page is still wet, so it's going to be pretty interesting to just see how this all flows together. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find kind of like the main lines of action, the main flow, as it were, and kind of lean into that, and then just sort of build in that direction so that there becomes a focal point over here. I feel like this little swirl is kind of the direction of the motion. So I'm going to kind of call that out first, and intentionally being just kind of big and messy. Kind of find some of these other pieces. I feel like this is somehow symbolic of just currents, maybe currents of change or something burning. One of the other things that I've come to recognize and appreciate in art making is showing up, as I've said, and then also just staying with it. My younger self would get so upset so readily when I had ideas to make something beautiful and artistic, and if it wasn't going exactly how I wanted, the tendency would be to stop. And I know I threw away so many canvases and just aborted attempts at whatever my intention was. And I've found now that to just keep going till the end. Sometimes it can be hard to know when the end is, but just to stay with the process. And my process right now is really just, I started with kind of the paint, and just letting it flow, letting my mind be curious and watching the colors run together. And now I'm just kind of playing add-on with myself. I'm just calling out little pieces as I see them. And I'm just going to continue to do this until it feels like something has been established. And if I just keep doing it, by the end of it, this is going to be such an interesting and original and fun to look at piece of art. And it'll never get there unless I just tend to it through its beautiful parts and its ugly parts. And I actually was thinking in that medicine journey that I did a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about my art, and I was wanting a deeper meaning, a deeper connection, a spiritual component. And I think what I really came out of that experience understanding or just feeling deeply was that the meaning of my art is that I make it. And that every brushstroke is an act of bravery. And whereas I've spent a long time being very concerned about how I appear, and if I appear as enough, or the right kind of person, the right kind of partner, the right kind of parent, the right kind of artist, I think now just kind of getting swept up in the flow of happening with trust. That's where my art comes from. And I can paint figurative. I've done quite a bit of figure drawing, and I really love to draw and paint nudes. It's so fun. The human body is so beautiful, and to be able to create art from an already beautiful subject, actually being in physical presence with a nude model, and then kind of creating your own impression is, it's such a joyful act of expression. But these paintings, coming on a live stream and just starting to bring ink to paper, it is that, what is it going to be? What are we going to find here? What is being uncovered? And I just know that if I let myself stick with the process, we will get somewhere. So zooming in on these little areas. Yeah, I'm already digging this. There's so many little interesting spots that I can just call out with the brush. And it's the kind of thing that you could never really plan. And that to me is really interesting. I feel like it's also sort of how my mind works. I think that I am very much in the moment, and my thoughts can happen very quickly and shift from thing to thing. And so to have something like this when it's finished, where I just get to see like all these little moments of getting lost and finding different forms, it becomes like a record of who I was, what I was doing, what I was thinking. And that only happens once in a lifetime. Cool. Yeah, Jay Pereira, thank you for tuning in. I know it's late. I figured I would just strike while the iron is hot. And it's also just interesting to see, like, what's the late night crowd like? So I'm feeling like what I want to do here is maybe kind of get into more of like a geologic feel. I end up doing this quite often, but kind of creating these little like landscapes and rocks where things can start to hide out and grow. This kind of looks like a plant. And this was a fun brush to choose. It does just have this like wispiness to it. It kind of whips around and leaves these trails. I might just ask some questions of you. I realize that I kind of sit down and I just start talking, because when the camera's rolling, it's like, that's what you do when a camera's pointing at you, right? But I'm curious, and you can answer in the comments, and if this is after the live stream, I'll take a look at the comments again. But I would love to know how you're doing. What is alive for you right now? What are you excited about? And conversely, what feels scary or frustrating? Where's there anger? One of the things that was said earlier tonight, also in the meditation group that gathered out there, was that frustration and anger are some of the greatest things to meditate on. And I found that too, just in like a creative practice, is that sometimes anger and big emotions, they've actually got our back. They're compasses. They show us where to point our energy. They might not always have the best solutions. If you're angry at someone, your anger might tell you to go punch them in the face. That's not quite the flavor. But just that the energy that comes up from being angry is so powerful, so much more powerful than just being docile and complacent. I've heard also that there are two ways to make a change in your life, or in situations, like if you're fed up with your job or the place that you live and you're thinking about moving or whatever it might be, that the two things required to make a change are either a real vision and a real sense of clarity as to what you want, or enough discomfort enough discomfort that it's unbearable and you have to move because it's just so. When I say move, I mean move your body, move your mouth, move things into action, because the discomfort can be just as valuable as having a vision. So, and I actually found that in the last couple of years, like I was really upset and frustrated that I didn't have a clear vision like I used to, because I worked a very long time, very hard for things that I believed in that didn't end up panning out. And so then I was left with this like, well, I have no vision. How do I even get out of bed in the morning? But there was just such a feeling of frustration or anger or discomfort that it spawned so many changes that then brought the clarity and the vision and those things that were lacking. So yeah, the question to you is, if you get still and you listen to how you're feeling, what your body is telling you, what does it say? I think something that's top of mind for me is that I have a number of friends and just people around me that are, I would say, existentially dissatisfied. And that's really not surprising, because in the same way that I talk about like how hard I worked for something for so long, I feel like in another way, like culturally, there's been a narrative at play for a long time, and then it kind of led us to the present moment where there are people. This is my perspective anyway, or at least my impression, that there's some people that just have so much, so abundantly everything. Like it's late stage Monopoly, like the board game, and there's a few players that just fucking have it all, and they're dicks about it, and they're like just for their own pleasure, like squeezing everybody else just because that's the only way that they can feel anything. Because when you are that last player, late stage Monopoly game, like you don't have a lot of friends. Your relationships kind of suck. You know, you've sort of burned every bridge at the table. You played the game right, but you also, in a way, kind of lost a part of your humanity. And now, you know, you're going to be sleeping on the couch. So what do you got to lose other than just to make the people around you suffer? And there's just this sense that like it's late in the game and the players that are left are just like jockeying to squeeze the last drops before the whole thing, before the table flips over. And the people that kind of bought into the game and said, oh yeah, I'll play this game in the first place, are now finding themselves not with anything to do, with nothing important to do, and no, without a future. I heard the term the other day, unfutured youth, which I think in Europe in certain cities and places, and there's like this growing number of unfutured youth that are emotionally and physically without like a clear purpose or a leader or hope or a game that's worth playing. And what happens then? And it seems like that effect is spreading. There's the super haves, and then there was kind of this middle class, and then there were different strata within that, and now it's all kind of just being flattened. And it's almost like, even in the US, it's almost like there's a war that's been bubbling against like even just like the upper middle class, like the battle lines are being drawn between people that economically are within a few percentage points of each other, while the people that are like just grossly raping and pillaging, they're kind of laughing, and they're positioning themselves against each other to take control over the land, over the industry, over I don't know. Late night, what can I say? I'm rambling a little bit, but yeah, the people around me, it's just like, gosh, is this all that there is to do? And then the things that actually are human, community and spirituality, are increasingly, I would say, under attack. It's like the last refuge, and that's under attack too. The right to be yourself, the right to love who you want to love, the right to say what you want to say. And in the name of free speech, we give up our own freedom to decide, and decide on a minute-to-minute basis. Like, that's the thing. We might feel something really strongly one day, and I think we should have the right as humans to always be testing and revising and questioning. If there's a dark cloud ahead, I think that could be part of it. But the battle lines, or the conversation is that hate kind of spreading to neighbors, and that would be really unfortunate. Yeah, build community around what you love. Absolutely. That's something that I have come to really, really understand. I did so much of my early experiencing solo, thinking that I had to, thinking that I was unacceptable, and that I had to do things way outside the fold. By which I mean, like, I've been experimenting with psychedelics since I was in my 20s. I'm now in my 40s. And in those days, I used to have to drive all the way out. Well, not have to, but I chose to get in my little Honda Civic and drive out to the deserts of Utah and camp by myself for days and days and have these big experiences, thinking that no one else on the planet had any idea, or that I was going to go crazy. And the ceremony that I participated in a couple weeks ago were a lot of people that probably were doing that also at that time, but now have found community and shared language, and in the interest of a deeper understanding and experience. And in that group, there were people. There was a Christian pastor. There were people that were, kind of, I'd say, had their own creative mythology, or artists and musicians, and just what you would call like normal people working normal jobs. But that community, I just felt so grateful to be in a space that was honoring of the differences in our experiences and perspectives, but coming together to have these really big experiences and then talk about them. Like, what is your life once you understand how much power you really have with your intention and your mindset? That's the real power. And that's the power that I'm scared to see under attack. I believe very strongly in the right to worship and practice in your own way. In the United States, the people that initially settled here were fleeing from the churches and persecution in Europe, in the old world, to come and have their own creative experiences, their own creative retellings of the story, their own firsthand experiences. And I guess over time, the things that were found from this kind of fringe, rebellious, personal relationship and experience get overridden by the mass kind of business of it. Wow, Bitcoin at 99K? Is that right? Cool. Thanks, Barris Parlin. Cool, yeah. Much love. This is one of the cool things about just turning on the camera is finding that we are in community. We're in a huge community. And if you were on earlier, there was someone who was just kind of like saying kind of nasty stuff, and I think I have been really weary to share myself because of the haters, and now it's like, you know what? All bets are off. The gloves are off. Like, this is who I am, and I know there's more people like me that do radically believe in humans and in the goodness of things. And even if the global culture seems to be kind of sick with this overconsumption and corporatization and I don't know, whatever those power games are, that the humanity endures. And no one ever needs to apologize for tuning in on a live stream. I'm really just here kind of free-flowing, making art, saying words. The value is not in that there's any real value. The value to me is just that creativity is happening, connection is happening. It'd be really interesting to find other formats where there could be a little bit more like audience participation, like a hotline, like just call in, let's have a conversation. Ooh, does someone want to try that experiment? Should I put my phone number into the Instagram or the YouTube chat box? I mean, this is what my teenage years were a lot of, is hanging out with friends late at night, just, waxing metaphysical, probably sounding like idiots, but it felt really smart at the time, and making art and sharing that experience, that we are not alone. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing that I really am just, I've been talking about it while I make this art, And even as I hear my words and quite often find myself like, man, am I just yammering? But it doesn't have to be perfect. Our voices are valid regardless of their content. Like, we need to use our voices. And sometimes just starting talking, like, it's not until the second half that the really good stuff comes out. Who was I talking to recently that did a bunch of podcasts? And I even know this from podcast interviews. Is like, I invite some awesome guests on the Uncomplication podcast back in the day, and there's like so much that I want to go deep on, and we both find ourselves just kind of exchanging the small talk for like the first, sometimes like 2 hours. And then it's almost like, all right, well, that was fun. Let's turn the mics off. And then the good conversation starts. So that's what I think is cool about the live stream, is it, unlike the videos I used to produce where, man, I would edit single words and sentences because I didn't want to sound dumb. And it was just such a inauthentic way to share, I guess. So yeah, this is sort of like, I don't know, the best thing that I say tonight might not be for another 20 minutes, and maybe only one other person will hear it, and maybe it'll only be me that hears it, but that it's worth getting there, and it's worth not hiding and not being afraid that we're not good enough, smart enough, but just to open up that conversation, use that voice. The voice is like a paintbrush, a tool of creativity. And the part of us that speaks isn't necessarily the same part of us that thinks. So this is starting to look pretty cool. I'm thinking I might even dip into some white paint. That could be pretty fun too, like to kind of lay in these darks and then to come back over with some white and just bring out some highlights. I also think it could be kind of cool to maybe bump down in brush size. Ooh. Return back to painting stones. Awesome. Use Bitcoin to buy land in southern Colorado. Awesome. Yeah, that, it's so interesting to see Bitcoin doing what it's doing. I guess I could noodle on that a little bit. In the last live stream that I call it sketchy thinking, where I was just talking, but I was kind of drawing like an illustration of what I was thinking about. And with crypto, it's like this lesson that I've had to learn over and over in my life, that I am an idealist, and I am really stubborn. And when something like disappoints me, I have a real hard time like reopening the heart. And there's so many flaws with crypto, and it allows people to buy land in southern Colorado. Like there's almost like a welcoming of the illusory nature of life. For example, I tell people these days that I'm an artist because that's what I do. I paint. I make art. I sell art. That's the identity that I've chosen for myself. Yet, I didn't go to art school. I had the opportunity to, but I chose other things. I can't yet paint hyper-realist oil paintings. I've done a few. I've taken some classes and I've done some things that are really impressive. But my point is, like, as an artist, what kind of artist am I? And I just am the artist that I am. And I would say that with crypto, not to be too much of like an apologist, but like there was a moment where I was just so upset at how far from my expectations crypto had landed, because I was a full-fledged evangelical for crypto. I believed that it was a source of freedom and fighting the system that has controlled money and controlled us. And I have to say 100% that it is not that. It is not what I wanted it to be. It's not what I hoped it would be. And I wasn't just making this up on my own. I think I was really kind of following the narrative, following the kind of the culture, the crypto culture that has this self-reinforcing narrative of being the smart ones and getting the better of the capitalists, whatever. And yeah, I think when I saw how much the market is the driving force, I lost that kind of religious belief in it being this savior, this lifeboat against the failing systems. And the way that I see it now is that it is infiltrated. It is under control. It is under the thumb of the same entities that have always controlled things. This is my belief, and it might not be right. This is just what I think at this point. The celebrating of BlackRock ETFs and the kind of rise and fall of the first and second waves of DeFi. I had at one point like close to $100,000 in BlockFi, and then through my falling out with kind of faith in crypto, I took everything out of there, and then I was so happy that I did, because I had friends that had stuff locked up in there. It still might be locked up in there. So digital value, I think the reconciliation that I've had just with myself, for myself, is that the value is not separate from the narrative. It's not separate from the people like Michael Saylor, making the grand exalted comments about it. It's like anything else that is sold. It has a story, it's got proponents, it's got detractors, and it's only as valuable as we collectively believe it is. And the fact that it can bounce back from moments of intense manipulation for the profit of a few, and reclaim the imagination and the narrative, and to such an extent that people see their earned money invested actually grow instead of shrink like it does everywhere else, is pretty stinking cool. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't think that because Bitcoin is at 99K, it's like, oh well, then all of the old school market manipulation, all of those games, all of the like constant shakeouts that are just kind of at this point tragic, but in a way just like comical almost, like the way that the narrative will trend in a direction to get people to do the wrong thing at the wrong time before whipsawing on them in one direction and then the other direction. It's just like, I just see it as like some bully like holding someone upside down and just shaking, and the test is, can you hold on? And I think my sad truth is that I just was like, you know what, this is not the game I want to play. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't bring the way that I want to feel on a daily basis. As soon as I kind of got out of my crypto, I still have some, but I got out of a lot of it at not the right time, but it was the right time for me, because it let me kind of step away from the weird like influencer thing that kind of happened that I was trying to navigate. It's like it was so tied up in more than just the Bitcoins, and it just wasn't anything that I wanted to focus on. And so yeah, I'm watching Bitcoin hit 99K or 100K, and part of me has a lot of words to say to that part of me that just said, you know what, we're going to pay off some debt, we're going to start our business, we're going to be on a solid floor, we're going to buy some windows for our house so it's not so damn cold. Like, the life choices, it's sort of like a painting. It's like I've been saying, this style of painting, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, it is so therapeutic because it allows me to just show up as I am. And if there's something I did earlier that looked like a mistake, like it's 10 layers deep by the end. And so I think in crypto, it has been just a litany of mistakes, learning each time, and then ultimately just having to ask the question, like, is this something that I want to devote time and attention to? And the answer was no. I think the way that I am re-engaging and have re-engaged is like the friends that I most respect, and if I had just listened to them since the beginning, would have been in a much more comfortable position. But those are the people that just, they, for whatever reason, they believe in it, and the money they put in is money that they can afford to lose, and they're not trying to time the market. They just see that this is something real. This is something that will continue long enough to pay dividends, and it's just kind of the buy and hold. And those people are not watching crypto YouTube on a daily basis, trying to find the next XYZ coin that's going to pop off. They're not even listening to people like me who are like going out to breakfast and drawing on the back of the to-go containers, like, yo, these are like the different classic TA how can I describe this? I was drawing for my friend Mike, kind of what I was drawing in the sketchy thinking last time, just like the different styles of peaks that you get based on different capped coins and what's likely to happen. And part of it was also just admitting that like Bitcoin is entering a maturity where, we can look back and say, all right, small cap coins have this kind of pump and dump, spike up, spike down. And then kind of mid-cap coins, like we've seen, I would say even Bitcoin in the last cycle was kind of like this mid-cap thing. I don't know, there's like $1 trillion total in the entire crypto market, and it did this very classic distributive pattern. And now we're kind of into this new territory where, like, who knows what games are being played. But this is kind of where I still land. Like, there are still games being played, and the cool thing, I guess, about Bitcoin is so long as the network maintains its integrity, like, there's probably lots of different games that are going to be played with it. Like right now, it might be, I don't know, the game of life, and then it might turn into Monopoly, and then the next time around, it might turn into something else. I think that, the people that are buying and holding the largest amounts, like that kind of sets the tone. It kind of lets you know where it's going. This is something that I was thinking about in 2021 when I was looking at the Michael Saylors and people like that, preaching from the pulpit and micro strategy, raising all this debt equity to buy Bitcoin. And it's like, okay, so I get that Bitcoin and crypto has this potential future, but is Michael Saylor like the president of Earth in the future? Is that where we're headed? Like, is that the economic outlook? Like, I don't know. Like Bitrock. BlackRock coming in and buying up gobs and gobs of Bitcoin and giving people little ticker symbols to trade instead of the actual Bitcoin themselves. Like, what kind of games are going to be played there? Like, it's poker chips. It's, I don't know. So at this point, for me, it's interesting. I still tune into a couple forums and just see what people are saying, and I think it's also a truth that people, I'm generalizing, but I think it's a known phenomenon that the logical fallacy of a confirmation bias, that most of what we do is just look for people that are going to tell us the thing that we most want to hear. And so we will very actively seek out and find the people that are saying the things that we already believe, so that we can then say, I knew I was right. I knew this was the thing. I knew there was a reason. So the kind of the shelf life and the market value of wisdom in this day and age is a lot smaller. And I mean, that just keeps the game going. You know, you can have, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I keep using Monopoly. I'll just say that. You know, you can have a game of Monopoly where, you know, you play it, and at the end, there's that one asshole with the entire bank under their control, just like putting the hammer down on everybody, and it sucks, unless you're that guy. And then, all right, the game ends, you put the box away, and then maybe a year later, it's like, hey, you want to play Monopoly again? And everyone's like, sure. Like, don't really remember what happened last time, and then it's like, oh yeah, this game fucking sucks, unless you're like really into sadomasochism. I don't know, maybe you like Monopoly, maybe I just don't, maybe that's just my predisposition. But I guess my point is, like, the funny thing is that no matter what lessons we learn, so long as we are willing to suspend disbelief, or even our best judgment, or even the lessons that we learned last time, like, the game can go on, and it can go on with the same players, new players. And so that's, in a nutshell, how I view Bitcoin at this point, is like, it's like these poker chips that don't disappear, and they're gonna keep playing out in different cycles in different ways. Presumably, I don't know, maybe they do just kind of all end up in like the same distribution of wealth that we've got everywhere else, and that's kind of the way that it's been going anyway. But my assumption is, like, this cycle that's playing out, like, we're gonna learn all kinds of new lessons about this way of playing the game, just enough that by the next time we play it, we'll think we know what the heck is going on. But the real game is to, like, always be shifting, always be mixing it up on us, because we're at a disadvantage. We don't own the poker chips. I don't know, I guess you can buy them. Anyone say anything? Monopoly takes too long. I agree. My son loves Monopoly, but he's also like, he just loves games, and he's really good at them, and he's really good at winning, and he will sit there and play Monopoly for like 10 hours. I'm bored by like the first 20 minutes. Yeah, crypto can bring on greed, but it can be used as a tool for freedom. Fibonacci sequences are interesting. Yeah. I wonder, when you say Fibonacci sequences are interesting, if you're thinking about like Fibonacci retracements in the market or in nature. You know, I actually wrote this whole article. I call it, actually, you know what? It's on the Uncomplication podcast on Spotify and Apple, etc. The title of the episode is Farewell Golden Spirals. And this is just a pattern for me. But similarly, like, I had a falling out with Fibonacci at one point. I don't know what this says about me. Like, if you're a psychoanalyst, maybe you can help me out. But, like, you know, there are certain things that come along and they just make such, like, sense. They're so pure, and they give me something to anchor into. And I really believe, and I really advocate, and I tell stories, and And golden spirals were like that. Like, I love nature and being in the woods and growing up in Colorado and just getting to have that much outdoor experience. I've stared at a lot of pine cones and a lot of faces of sunflowers, and when I learned about the golden ratio and Fibonacci, it just is like, oh, there it is. There's like the face of God looking at me. This underlying mathematical structure and just this like deeper unfolding. It's like we're all in a computer simulation or something, and these are kind of the root seed values that went into this iteration or whatever. And so then I found through my rabbit holing this website, this like mathematician that just completely debunked Fibonacci. Not that Fibonacci numbers and the Fibonacci series doesn't exist. It does, and it does create a mathematically perfect spiral. But, and this is, I haven't revisited this, but the gist was, if you actually go and you look at a picture of a sunflower face, or a pine cone, or a galaxy, or a nautilus shell, or all these places where it, we say, oh, it's a perfect golden spiral. If you actually measure those angles, none of them are perfect. That the Fibonacci sequence gives us this perfect golden spiral, but in nature, just like the human body is not an embodiment of the perfect golden ratio, because every single human body is a different proportion. Like we're all, it's close, but it's not exact. And so I had this like, oh my gosh, like, and then I actually did the research, and I went and I looked, and I couldn't find, I took pictures of all of these spirals, and I put the golden spiral on top, and sure enough, none of them fit. They approximated it. Things approximate towards this golden spiral. But that was another moment for me, just kind of like a random story. But like, I went from, going on hikes with people and just really excitedly telling them about, the golden ratio and this underlying like perfection in nature, and having to just like, well, got to throw out that stack of concepts and lean more into not the perfected ideal, but just what it is. Like whatever nature is, whatever God is, whatever the universe is doing, the intelligence or the motion, the forms behind it, it's not the mathematical pure perfection. It really is this interplay of chaos and who knows what else, and that is even more beautiful. And this art, I keep coming back to it, but seriously, like my early art was so meticulous. Let me show you, just like over here. Here's my old sketchbook. I keep this laying around. Like let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Put a little bit more light on it. Really what I was trying to share or say in a lot of these early moments was this like beautiful, organic, mathematical, not necessarily perfect, but my intention was to create something that just reflected the beauty that I saw in nature. This was this little sketch. I'll probably come back to this someday. This was like this little planet that has on one side like a forest growing, and then the forest kind of subducts and turns into oil. Actually, it goes this way. So the forest subducts, turns into oil, and at the same time there's like glaciers, and then little people start coming out of the forest, and then they build these cities and villages, and then these like huge cities, and they start drilling this oil that the trees had turned into, and then creating all this pollution swirling around. And then I think it ends in, some kind of a abrupt whatever, but then that kind of goes back down. So it's like this swirling. I did a lot of prep for this drawing, but my only point is like, these measurements and the exactness with which I was trying to communicate ideas. I appreciate my younger self And maybe it's just like with age, I don't have the time or the willingness to put up with my own like lack of ability. These little planet cores. I think I got, yeah, this is kind of a cool little sketch. So all of this was kind of building towards creating this planet, this planetoid. I wanted to make it huge on a huge sheet of paper and just have so much intricacy like that first drawing that I shared. Yeah. This is my younger selves method of creating. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like the narrative here is the break from the perfection and the break from trying to meticulously control every line to like tell this big grand story. And you know, maybe this is just less beautiful to you. I don't know. Maybe it's less impressive because it doesn't have that level of like left brain, analytical, meticulous kind of control. But my feelings are these days that making art like this is more satisfying because it is something that I can just sit down and I can just kind of get lost in, and I'm not attached to results. I'm not, you know, erasing the same circle 50 times because I want it to be this like perfect little planetoid. Yeah, it just kind of becomes whatever it is. And one of the best parts is I can, you know, sit down for an hour. I can run my mouth with you guys, and then when I'm done, I can peel off the tape and call it done. And it's not burning up bandwidth or following me around for days and days and days. I mean, some of my paintings have taken months. The more figurative stuff, like my lion that's always behind me on the wall back there, that guy, you know, that was a much larger process. But yeah, it's just really satisfying to paint like an autistic 5-year-old. I'm gonna peel the tape off this and see what we've got. You know, one of my favorite people of all times is Alan Watts. Favorite people of all time is Alan Watts, and I loved how he said some of the most profoundly deep things I've ever heard in this life, and he never took himself seriously. And I remember a quote from him. He was talking about a Zen teacher who said, you know, from the cradle to the cradle, I have uttered stuff and nonsense. And that's what this is. This is showing up. This is making nonsense. This is just reveling in what paint does when I just let it be paint. And in the end, it just, yeah, it's like a relic. It's a relic of this moment, whatever thoughts were happening, whatever words were being shared. And it's fun. You know, I'm going to try something for those of you listening and those of you who made it to the end. I have a friend who's in my artist freedom community who does live streams, and he's so proud of himself. He has sold 64 consecutive paintings. So he'll show up, he'll do a painting, and then he'll sell it. And I haven't really tried that yet. I haven't really actually tried to say this painting is for sale, but I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to say that this painting is for sale. Yeah, now let's put a value on it, because that part is like the most difficult part. I'm going to sign it. Put a date on it. I think one of the reasons why he has such an awesome record of selling is because his, I think he just puts like a fixed price on all of them. And then people can actually even buy it before he starts painting it. And with something like this, you know, it's hard to value. On one hand, it was so exceedingly easy for me to make in a way because I've done a lot of live painting like this, and it's just something that I can really do naturally. So there's a tendency for me to undervalue. And then there's this other part of me that is like leans in the opposite direction. So I have a painting on the wall over here that has a price tag on it of $20,000, and that was hanging at an art gallery here in Fort Collins for the month of October, and I think it's actually worth it. I think it is such a beautiful, huge painting. It took a long time to make. I'm gonna see if I can go rogue here. You can take this off. I've tried this before. It rarely works. Anyway, I can post pictures of it. So, you know, somewhere in between like the $250 that I think my friend sells his paintings for and the $20,000, I think I'm gonna go, I don't know, it'd be fun just to sell something. I'm gonna say, it's so funny. It's so hard. A painting like this, the ones that I have in here, they're all over $1,000, but I feel like I just want to price it to sell. And what do you think? In the comments, what's your bid? If anyone is watching live, what would you bid on this? It is 12 by 16, so it is rather large. It actually might be 15 by 20. No, this is 12 by 16. I forgot which pad this came off of. Let's see. I feel like I'm on the Publishers Clearinghouse or whatever. Oh yeah, this one is, that is 20. Yeah, so this is a 15 by 20, so it's pretty large. It's actually pretty cool. This is my work too. It's just like, as an artist, I started off painting and then giving my paintings away to people in coffee shops. Like I would go sit at local coffee shops, and then I would just do these little paintings. I had this little travel kit of watercolors, and when I was done, I would just give them away. And that was when I was in like full recovery mode. It was after I lost my business. It was when my marriage of 13 years was totally on the rocks, and I felt just completely worthless. And by giving away my art, I started to see how much value strangers put on these like gifts. Just like, here's this beautiful thing, I made it for you. And there was so much joy there. And these were early paintings, so some of them were pretty rough. And even the ones that I thought were ugly or, you know, not what I envisioned, would still delight people when I would give them as gifts. And so it was this way of like really boosting confidence and boosting self-worth. And yeah, so that's the spirit with which I like to make art. And then the economic side of things is that I've had to get better at putting prices on things. And I told the story a couple months ago about this gift that I brought to a woman who has a lot of money, and she got so mad at me that I was trying to give it to her and that I wouldn't accept money for it. And it kind of woke me up to like the exchange that does take place, where, you know, someone who is in a position to buy art and support artists, you know, that's part of the joy for them. And so to remove that from the equation so that I feel comfortable was doing a disservice to both of us. So, yeah. Jesus saves. well, I gotta end this stream. I'm gonna say this painting is $500. And I'm gonna put it up on my website. And it is one of a kind. And you can also email me if you're interested at connect@ryanstoverart.com, or you can go to ryanstoverart.com. I've been kind of building that site out. And yeah, I sold a painting that was smaller than this a couple days ago for $2,000. So $500 feels like a pretty low price actually for the art that I have been making and selling. But yeah, I will leave it there. That was a long stream. It's how we do late night ramblings with Ryan. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, cheers.